Good morning, everybody. Today, we're going to be talking about the 99%. We're going to be talking about SMEs. And very often, SMEs don't get the level of attention that they deserve while being the 99%, except maybe at Accountancy Europe, because at Accountancy Europe, SMEs are one of our priorities. My name is Olivier Boutelis. I'm the Chief Executive of Accountancy Europe. One of the very difficult parts of my job from time to time is to take people out for lunch. And the other day, I was going to one of my favorite restaurants in Brussels for an important meeting. And I got an email just before going to the restaurant. And the restaurant owner, who I know quite well, was telling me, "I'm sorry, I just cannot open today. The cost of energy to start the kitchen and the number of tables I have booked is just not going to make it." That is a sign that even very small SMEs are really impacted. And very often, I think, we think that they're impacted because someone in Russia actually started a crazy war, having a great impact on the price of energy and the price of commodities and food, actually. Now, the truth is that a country like Russia and globally all countries that are oil producers have all reached the peak of their production already. So in a way, what the war started, unfortunately, was due to happen. And the cost of energy and the cost of commodities, same thing. They had started to raise, long before the war started. In my country, France, there has been a quite terrible water stress this summer. And as a result, prices of food had already started increasing. Some of the farmers in this country that is in the middle of Europe are starting to grow sorghum. I don't know if you know, but sorghum is something that is normally being, cultivated in Africa, not in France. So we are in a very difficult situation, unprecedented. And this is not only a matter for large organizations and large businesses, it is a matter for SMEs. SMEs, as I just showed with a couple of examples, are already impacted. They will be further impacted. And while the big polluters need to make the largest efforts, SMEs are not out of this game. So, the way we see our responsibility at Accountancy Europe is to help them adapt, to help them transform, and also to help them face the deluge of legislation that we're going to have, or at least that I anticipate. So even if they're not directly impacted by this legislation, for many, many SMEs across Europe, not necessarily my restaurant and my old friends who are working on a farm, they are impacted because they are part of the supply chain of other large companies. And it has started all across the continent. So it is due time that we start giving more consideration to SMEs and on how to help them. That's what we do at Accountancy Europe. That's our purpose with today's event. So I wish you a very good conversation. This conversation is going to be led by my excellent colleague, Noémie. And Noémie, I'm delighted to give you the floor with a fantastic panel of speakers. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Olivier, and indeed a fantastic panel for our event this morning. Before we start the conversation, so I just would like to give you a heads up that the event is going to be recorded and can be available on our website and on our YouTube channel. And the audience can ask questions throughout the event via Slido. So you may find the link to the Slido platform below the YouTube channel. So below the video, there is a link. Otherwise, it's the code #SME. I am indeed delighted to welcome this great panel today. It's a group of experts that we are going to exchange on SMEs and how to help them in this sustainable transition. We will start by exchanging on how sustainable transition will affect SMEs in order to set the scene, and then we can go into what support SMEs would need on this journey. So I propose that we start this panel with a short tour de table, ladies and gentlemen. So that you can present yourself and your organization, where you come from on this subject matter. That would be very useful for the audience to start with. So if I can turn first to Luc. Luc Hendricks, can you present yourself, Luc, and a bit SME United, and maybe what what SME United is doing to support SMEs on this agenda?
Of course, thank you, Noemi, and thank you, Olivier, for inviting SME United here today. So SME United is the European SME organization. We are also a European social partner. Our members are cross-sectoral national organizations, but also European branch organizations. We have members in 30 countries, around 70 member organizations. And as I said, we are also a European social partner, so we can speak on behalf towards the European institutions on behalf of the 22 million SMEs in Europe, and we only represent small and medium-sized enterprises. Why are we interested in sustainability? Because we are interested in all topics that can have an impact on small and medium-sized enterprises. And as Olivier mentioned, or not 99% SMEs, but 99.8% of all European companies are SMEs. They are the engine of the European economy and therefore already an important driver for sustainability. And in addition, it's still shocking that I remember in 2003 when the Commission published the Green Paper on Corporate Social Responsibility, the Commission wrote that small and medium-sized enterprises were not interested in corporate social responsibility. And a couple of months ago, in the proposal of the Commission concerning the due diligence, in fact, they wrote something else. So after 20 years, it's still the same position in the Commission that SMEs do not care about the future. The Commission said companies are driven by short-termism, and they also do not take into account the interest of stakeholders and society. This is not true, especially small and medium-sized enterprises. They are by necessity concerned about the long term because they have invested their own assets, even their own entire inheritance, and especially family business have to ensure that a transfer towards the next generation is guaranteed in the best way. So we have to ensure SMEs and has to ensure the interest of the company, and this implies also a long-term view.
Okay, great. It's a good statement, Luc, to start with. Thank you for that. Do we have Valérie de Rambure with us? I don't see you on the video, Valérie. If you could put your video. Yes. Oh, great. Perfect. And you can leave it open so that we can see each other and react to to what we are saying. So, Valérie, you come from the banks sector, right? You are representing the European Associative of Cooperative Banks and a French bank, the Groupe BPCE. Can you just give us a bit of background of the BPCE and the EACB and why you are, interested into this SME sustainable transition?
Of course. So BPCE is a major cooperative bank in France, and here I am here on behalf of EACB, which, as you know, represent cooperative banks in Europe. EACB stands for 87 million members, 223 million customers. And we have an overall market of 20% share in retail banking, and mostly through to households and SMEs. So we cooperative banks, they are very well known for having a long history to promote social, environmental, and economic well-being of the communities they belong to. And we strongly believe that as a bank, as a financial institution, we really have a fundamental role to play to accompany our customers in their transition. Of course, by financing the cost of the transition, which is huge, as you know, but also in helping to increase the awareness of SMEs about the climate change challenges they are facing, and in order to help them to make the good investment decisions, and to help them enhance their resilience and ensure business continuity in case adverse natural events will occur.
All right, great, good, welcome. Then I will turn to Jean-François Ponce. Jean-François, where do you come from, and why is SMEs a sustainable transition interesting for you?
Good morning. Good morning to you all, and thank you for the invitation. I'm a consultant. The name of the firm is Alphalex Consult. It is based in Brussels, and it deals with European economic and financial issues. And I've been working for a task force of the Paris Financial Place since now 2 years. It started beginning of 2021 on the specific issue of SMEs and ESG data, because the financial place was afraid of seeing the new regulation about transparency having an impact on SMEs, and we started with listed SMEs, and with a risk to cut financial flows to SMEs, to have problems of these listed SMEs with their suppliers and clients. I'm not going to be too long, but that was the beginning. Then I published an article last year with another cap, because I'm also associate researcher at Europe Jacques Delors, which is a think tank named after the former president of the Commission, Jacques Delors, in Brussels, on this issue in March last year. And I've just published another one very recently to update the situation, also published by Europe Jacques Delors.
Great, welcome. Then Jesper Esman Andersen, who is working actually in Ruskhardt. Jesper, and yes. Can you present a bit the organization and what you do for SMEs?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Yeah, so our history goes back around 40 years. We started out as a traditional accounting firm doing bookkeeping and accounting. Our customers are small and medium-sized companies based here in Denmark. And today we have grown into around 130 employees. And we do offer, of course, still accounting and bookkeeping, but also a bit other services closely related to accounting and bookkeeping, as for example, helping the customers with climate accounting. And we are not part of any network. We are ourselves started by, run as a family business. And we are, of course, involved in this SME sustainability and reporting ourselves as a SME, working with it. And these years, we are, of course, asking ourselves, what more can we do when it comes to sustainability and sustainability reporting? And then, of course, we also have an interest in this sustainability agenda, as our customers are SMEs, and many of them are very interested in this topic. And we are one of the trusted advisors for these SMEs, so they often come to us with questions and asking for some kind of help. And in general, our customers, they appreciate that we as an accounting firm also could help with at least some of the areas of sustainability and sustainability reporting. It can be assistance on how to get started with ESG reporting, how to make some of the calculations, be it the climate accounting or other elements of ES or G. It can be setting up the reports, either in the annual report or in different reports.
I am sure you will give us some more examples later, Jesper. That would be very interesting for us to hear some, concrete examples on how you manage to help and support SME clients. So we'll dig into this a bit later. And then our last speaker of the panel is Andrzej Kovarik. Andrzej, you are a member of the European Parliament and part of the SME intergroup. So tell us a bit more on this SME agenda that you particularly support at the Parliament.
Thank you, Noemi, and thank you. Good morning to everyone. Thank you for the invitation and for the possibility to be today with you on this panel. Indeed, as you mentioned, I'm a member of the European Parliament, elected in 2019, and I'm part of the so-called SME Intergroup, among others, which is a specific body created by the European Parliament together with the representatives of the industry, of the stakeholders, to discuss some specific issues related to the agenda. In our case, obviously, it's the SME. SME related issues. We have around 50 members from the European Parliament, coming from various political groups, but also coming from various parliamentary committees. I myself work on the agenda in the Economic and Monetary Affairs committees, but we have also colleagues coming from the Industry Committee, but also from the Environment Committee. And for instance, just this morning, we had a specific meeting on the SME window of the InvestEU financial instrument, just to give you an example on what type of issues that we're organizing debate and we're trying to boost the discussion in the Parliament. And I mean, it is, I think, more than obvious that both the climate transition, but I think also the SME agenda in general are in the heart of our discussions in the European Parliament, to make sure that the SMEs are able to pass the transition process as smooth as possible, that we do not create administrative burdens or unnecessary administrative burdens to companies. That is very challenging because, you know, we are working on the regulation. So that is a very thin balance that sometimes we're trying to strike. And also, I think, and that's my specific also interest in it, to make sure that the SMEs can thrive and can have access to finance, also to make sure that they can finance their further growth, but also the transition, and specifically that the transition and the public policies that we adopt do not leave SMEs behind.
Yeah, what a challenge, right? Thank you, Andrzej. And I'm sure that you are often in link with SME United and with Luc Hendricks. So if we dig into a bit more into the debate, and Luc, maybe you could start to give us a bit of of background of how you think that all these requirements that will affect SMEs that are linked to sustainability matters. How do you think they are going to affect SMEs, and how do you assess this such impact for the SMEs that you work with?
Yeah, thank you, Noemi. Well, Noemi, in fact, you should expect if the Commission, and by the way, we are a pro-European organization.
It's good to mention at the beginning.
No, I mean, it's even in our statute, so let this be clear. But I think we have now more than a decade. We have at the Commission, we have those impact assessments. And when you're asking what will be the consequences for SMEs of the sustainability requirements, CSRD, CSDD, also the forced labor proposal. I mean, then we would expect that we could have a good report of the Commission in an impact assessment, but it's quite strange, especially for the CSRD. The Commission said, oh, SMEs are out of the scope and we cannot assess the impact. While the impact will, of course, be very important, and the Commission even recognizing this due to the trickle-down effect, because large enterprises and also listed SMEs will have to report according to the CSRD. EFRAG is at the moment drafting those.
Luc, you are on mute. I don't know. It seems that you have clicked on a button.
Already long time?
Just your last sentence.
Okay.
No.
Sorry. So EFRAG is, I think there it was cut. EFRAG is at the moment drafting the standards for the large enterprises. And there also is already a problem because also there we do not know what large enterprises will request from small and medium-sized enterprises. And in EFRAG, there has been done a cost-benefit analysis, which in our view is not very credible, because they said that the impact for SMEs will be a one-off cost of €1,300 and a recurring cost of €2,000, while everybody knows that a simple advice already of a consultant already cost €4,000. Jesper will certainly confirm this. If you go outside, that the cost for an SME is quite high. And there, once again, we are also drafting in EFRAG an SME standard, which should be feasible for the smallest enterprises, because this is exactly what we want to do. And this is forgotten also by the Commission. We want indeed, because sustainable reporting is something that we are in favor for, because it can help small and medium-sized enterprises if it remains a voluntary basis, because it is an excellent management tool in order to see where do I stand compared to my peers, where can I improve, where can I improve my performance, where can I reduce waste, how can I reduce the absence in my company, or is there a problem with sickness leave and so on. So it's a very important tool. The problem is that at this moment we do not know what the consequences will be of the large enterprise standard, because there is the freedom of contract. So large companies will be allowed to ask whatever information from small and medium-sized enterprises. And then, if I may, concerning the due diligence proposal, there it's even maybe the situation worse. What the problem there is that the CSDD at the moment gives no legal certainty about the applicable material norms. There is a long list of international agreements that also SMEs should respect, but this is not applicable, and this is exactly the main problems. The absence of applicable material norms, which is a huge concern for us because it gives not legal certainty for our companies. Also, there will be certainly regulatory fragmentation because too much leeway is given to the member states. So there is the risk of foreign shopping. There will be no level playing field on the basis of the Commission proposal between companies in Europe and companies outside Europe. But the main problem for us is also there, the trickle-down effect, and SMEs will be there severely affected because they are in the value chain of large enterprises. And the problem is exactly, and we want, and we are in favor of a due diligence legislation, but the problem is that small and medium-sized enterprises cannot exercise their influence in the subcontracting chain. So they cannot, as I said, exercise their influence, and so they cannot enforce certain due diligence conditions on their own business partners, and this has to be recognized. And then also the mitigating measures that the Commission is proposing are insufficient. And there I would remind you, so the Commission is now, and this is a positive point, they propose to create a database. But and there once again to prove that SME United is dealing with this issue for many years. Already in 2011, we have asked the Commission in the framework of the multi-stakeholder forum on corporate social responsibility to try to pool all the information from embassies, from the international labor organizations, from the representations of the Commission in third countries, to put this information together in order to give the possibility to SMEs to contract with reliable partners in third countries. So already 10 years ago, we have asked it because we are concerned about the due diligence, but so far nothing happened. So there is a huge impact for small and medium-sized enterprises by both proposals, and we hope that also the Parliament will take our concerns into account, not to avoid responsibility, but to give small and medium-sized enterprises legal certainty. We want to have a due diligence legislation. We want, or we are in favor of a sustainable reporting, but it has to be meaningful and feasible for the smallest enterprises.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect, Luc. That was a bold statement, and I could see Valérie nodding at some point because Valérie, you heard the trickle down effect and this information requested by SMEs. I assume that in banks you also request information from SMEs, and so do you have any insights to provide us on what do banks need from SMEs in addition to all these requirements coming from Europe?
Yes, maybe before telling you what we need, I wanted to say that I very much agree with what Luc was saying, and that bank institutions were very well aware of the burden, the amount of work, the cost that will occur for SMEs in order to comply with all these new regulation. But I think it's important also to understand the financial institution point of view, and also, you were talking, Luc, about the big company that very often these SMEs work for as subcontractor or whatever. And the fact is, as a financial institution, we have an enormous pressure, a tremendous pressure from all our stakeholders, from the regulators, of course, but also from our customers, from our investors, from the NGOs. I'm sure you've seen a lot of papers about what are the banks doing, when will they align their portfolio towards the net zero trajectory. So we have a lot of pressure, and this pressure is we are being asked to decarbonize our portfolio. It means that we have a lot of pressure to make sure that whatever we finance is all the activities, all the goods, all the businesses, all the companies that we finance, they themselves are less carbon intensive. And we all engaged toward the net zero trajectories. So it means that by 2050, all our portfolio should, so everything we finance, the economy we finance, should be a net zero economy. So that's what the pressure we have on. And in order to monitor that, to monitor the decarbonization of our portfolio, of course, we need data. So it's right now, I'm telling you, it's not easy to get this data, even from the big company, from the large company, even though this large company, they are capable to do this calculation sometimes, even though there are a lot of data providers that already give this data, but there are still a lack, even on large companies, there are a lack of data. And when it comes to SMEs, and cooperative banks, we are very well represented for SMEs, because we finance a lot of SMEs. That's the core of our business. So when it comes to SMEs, of course, there is nothing, because SMEs are not capable to provide us with this data. So for us, this new regulation is important because it will allow us to get this data, but we do we are very much aware that the regulation must be fair enough. It means that we don't need as many data as the regulation seems to plan. We just want a few key data that it would be more feasible for the SMEs to provide, to calculate, and only the key ones. And of course, it's very important, and I think Luc talk about that also, that we could have a European database, if not a worldwide database, in order to get all the data possible to make life easier for these SMEs.
And do you have examples of these key ones that you mentioned, Valérie?
Yes, of course. The key one is the greenhouse gas emission, or maybe one KPI per item, like greenhouse gas emission, water protection, waste management, one social KPI, for example, for the way you handle your employees. A few KPIs, one or two for each big purpose, and that would be enough.
But it would be important to have them set in stone in a standard, so that it's not, because Luc mentioned voluntary, but if it's voluntary, it's not comparable in a way.
I'm sorry, Luc, but I think voluntary will not be enough. It should be mandatory, but not too many KPIs, and most of all, we should have tools and methodology, simple tools and simple methodology that could be provided to these SMEs in order for them to calculate that easily. I know that some consulting firms are working on that. For example, to calculate your greenhouse gas emission, you could just enter, for example, the number of you mean the type of building, the type of energy that you're consuming, how many trucks do you have in your with your business? You know, you give a few very concrete information that you have, and then you make an estimate. You have a tool that provides you with an estimate of your greenhouse, your green your gas emission, and that would be enough. You know, so very simple tools that could be provided to SMEs for them to calculate these KPIs, and these KPIs would be comparables between the different SMEs, and maybe that would help us a lot.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Shall I turn to Jean-François now? Jean-François, what all of this give you as food for thoughts? I think that what would be great would be to... you are on mute. Go ahead. You wanted to react already.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm very happy to follow up on after Luc and Valérie, because they have said many interesting things with which I agree, and so I will not repeat them. By the way, we had an interesting high-level seminar in Paris in March under the French presidency. It was part of a program of French presidency on this issue, which I helped to organize, and Luc was present, and somebody, it was not Valérie, but Elisabetta Cuiva was there from the European Association of Cooperative Banks. And there were SMEs, there were, of course, Accountancy Europe was also there. And we had some CEOs of SMEs, of listed SMEs, which give us their what they have been through, their experiences. And all that was very conclusive on, of course, the difficulties of the situation, but also the ways to progress. And I must say, I'm very happy that Valérie mentioned the idea of simple criteria and to simple indicators. By the way, in my article, I quote a paper which is coming from the Association Française de Gestion, the French Association of Asset Managers, which has worked a lot and which published a list of, if I remember well, 26 indicators covering environment, climate, social, and governance, which could be not all of them, but most of them easily done by SMEs. So I will not be long. What I would really look at will be the listed SMEs, because it's an interesting part of a sector, and it's the part which is supposed to be the most apt to do the collection and publication of ESG data. So if this segment, which is important, works, it could be, of course, a model for others where the difficulties certainly are more important. If you look at the listed SMEs in Europe, it's a population of 2,000 enterprises. So it does not seem to be many, but you must remember that the big enterprises which are listed are only 500. Of course, those are gross figures, and it's not precise, but that's a magnitude. So it's still important. And these listed SMEs employ 6% of wage earners in Europe. So it's already important. And what we discovered is that they are in sectors which are very sensitive to the thematics of environment and climate. They are in chemicals, they are in transport, they are in buildings, they are in agro-industry. So the question of energy, the question of ecological transition are important for them. And the most recent poll we had was a poll made by Euronext for this conference in Paris in March. They had answers by 79 small and medium, what we call small and mid caps, so small and medium enterprises which are listed. And first, I must say that the number is not very big as answers, and unfortunately, that's also my experience because I interviewed many listed SMEs. those SMEs which are not, which feels not very happy with ESG démarche generally does not answer the polls. So it's more the good pupils, if I may say so, which answer the poll. And amongst the 79, only 11% feel that they had a good démarche, they are okay, and only, if I remember well, 35% of them had a specific team dedicated to ESG. This team can be 1%, of course. When you compare to large enterprises, 80% of them have a team. So not 100%, but still much more, of course, than listed SMEs. So just to give you an idea about the situation. Now, of course, we all know, and Luc more than all of us, the difficulties, even in a listed SME, for having sufficient resources, sufficient time, and also sufficient information. The question of information is important. There are lots of regulations, but they are not easy to understand. And especially the consequences, the practical impact is not always. I just give you an example. One of the CEO of the SMEs present in Paris was an entrepreneur which was producing bioproducts for atmosphere in a room and this kind of thing, made about natural plants and so on. And when he starts speaking with financial investors and so on, he thought he was green. His enterprise was green. And they say, no, you have to prove it. What is your process of production? How do you do it? And you remember, you are not far from an area which is protected. Natural. So what are your links with this area? He never thought about it. So he was obliged to ask consultants to work for him, and so on. And it took years. So just not to underestimate the difficulties, even if you are not with very huge, I would say, handicap in terms of ESG. So it's a long démarche. I must say that the energy crisis, of course, makes the things more difficult today because most of the SMEs have priority concerns about what they do next week, how they buy their energy and so on. So their resources, which are already relatively limited, are very impacted by the outlook today. So we still think that we can do better, and Valérie started to say it. There are tools to help SMEs. With the help of Accountancy Europe, when we made démarche vis-à-vis the European Commission, we were able to tell them that there were tools available in some countries, in some professions. Of course, they have their natural partners, the SMEs. The accountants are part of them, the banks, the retail banks are part of them, the federation, the professional federations, and they can disseminate information, they can have dialogue, they can tell them this tool can be helpful for you and so on. So there are difficulties, but there is a positive side about tools. Of course, it's also the interest of the SMEs themselves, especially the SMEs which are very energy intensive, to have the good metrics about what they do, what they could do, and so on. And it's also for them, I think it was said already, it's a question of image for them also, vis-à-vis, of course, their commercial partners, but also vis-à-vis the local authorities, the national governments, the NGOs, which have been also quoted, and their personnel. More and more, the young people are proud to be in an enterprise, a small enterprise, which is green, which is sustainable, or which works to improve its carbon footprint, etc. So all those elements are important. What we would like to see, and when I say that, it was a conclusion of the colloque in Paris, is really to have a mobilization of the natural partners of the SMEs, including the public authorities. We really think that the public authorities are late to help the SMEs in this démarche. There are tools which can be implemented by public authorities. Some are, for instance, in some programs, including EU programs, you have some financial aid to SMEs for decarbonation and so on, but it's still very scarce. It's disseminated, and generally the SMEs themselves do not know, even in the country where it works, that this kind of assistance is there. So what we would like really is a mobilization, is a kind of platform where you could find the good information, the good tools, what your federation can do for you, what a firm of your branch does, which is a kind of model and so on, to really help this move, which is necessary, but which is difficult for the SMEs. Thank you.
Yeah, that's very interesting, Jean-François, and very down to the field in a way, like how to make this happen. But I have noted not underestimate the work and have a potentially a dedicated person. I think that if you have already someone dedicated to drive this, that's already something. So when talking about the dedication, we can turn to our trusted advisors. I think that was the term that was used, Jesper, to talk about the professional accountants that can support SMEs in this transition. Definitely not for 1,200 euros. I think that was the amount that you mentioned, Luc, from this survey from EFRAG. But we are here to help out and to make the link with the accounting. Do you have any specific examples, Jesper, or any specific experience on such support that you provide to SMEs?
Yeah, sure. So just to follow up what you guys just said, we also experience from the SMEs that they are very interested in this area. And if they can see that rules, regulations are simple and they are meaningful and they are part of a standard, and if they can see that it's not going to be too big of an administrative burden and not too expensive, but perhaps a business opportunity, well, then our experience is that they are very interested in this area. And of course, we experience that they often turn to us in the accounting industry as a person with a specialist knowledge about, of course, accounting and bookkeeping, but also the general knowledge about many of the sort of issues, opportunities for these SMEs when it comes to understanding the sustainability, at least the sustainability reporting area. Because a lot of the knowledge that we have within this area is something that we use in our day-to-day work in our other areas about data, processes, documentation, internal controls, calculations, and so on. And we experience the SMEs, they like to come and discuss these issues with us because we also already sort of understand their business and how to use the standards and calculations for their area of business. So I think we have a great opportunity as accountants to assist these SMEs in their transition and in their reporting, both when it comes to climate accounting, as you said, the greenhouse gas calculations, but also the areas within the social and governance part of the reporting. Also, of course, the risk analysis and risk management is something that we often see them turning to us with questions about. Of course, we, as a profession, we need to develop and get new skills in order to help the SMEs with some of these issues. And questions that they have, and of course need to understand these new regulations and opportunities the SMEs have for developing. And I think we can still use our independency as accountants and give credibility to the numbers and the reporting that Valerie and other people, be the big customers that they need. So in short, I think we're well placed to help these businesses with sustainability disclosure and serving the general public with helping these SMEs on their reporting and transition, and helping with this trustworthy data and reporting. As some of you mentioned, perhaps, yeah, we need a database, but we also need it to be trustworthy data coming into this database in order to understand the businesses and in order to benchmark and know what to finance and potentially what not to finance. Yeah, so
So definitely reporting disclosures, as you mentioned, Jesper, and assessment of these disclosures. There is also we published. I'm sorry, I'm cutting you to mention the fact that at Accountants Europe we developed some tools and in a project in particular with EACB as well, in order to support SMEs in this, where to start. So because there is a need also to review a bit the strategy of the SME and the process improvement and all of that, and there is something to be done to start with, and we cannot really start with reporting only, and of course performance measurement, where accountants can also help, right, Jesper?
Yeah, and as you said, it also often start with getting the data when you start up on your sustainability reporting. A lot of these SMEs, they don't have the data available yet. Perhaps they have some of it, but that's also something we help them with, how to get started on this. Yeah, and sometimes we also help them translate what are the legal requirements, or also the expectations from the bigger customers, how to translate that into what data should they be gathering in order to supply.
Or from the supply chain as well.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Andres, I see you nodding. Thank you, Jesper. I see you nodding. I feel like you have some thoughts from from this discussion on your public role here to support SMEs.
Yes, indeed. Very good discussion. I'm really glad I was listening and taking a lot of notes, to be honest. I think, I obviously fully understand the interest of various stakeholders here. But I really think we should first and above all, think how we can actually make sure that the compliance issues can be as easy and as accessible for SMEs as possible. Because we're discussing here about dedicated teams and et cetera. The companies, especially the small and medium sized and micro companies, they wouldn't have specific chief sustainable officer or a dedicated team to collect data. That would not just be happening. But we need to find ways. We have to be creative. There is a clear need, to have better picture and situation awareness about the sustainability issues also linked to companies. It is because of, let's say, general policies, but it is because of also the financial institutions' needs. That's clear. And I think, to be honest, it is also coming internally from the companies. I think it was Jean-François who said that the energy crisis makes it more difficult. It does, in terms of, I think, availability of funds, et cetera. But on the other hand, if you look at it, now the companies face internally the difficult decision how to make their energy consumption more efficient,
Mhm.
how to actually make their operations more resilient, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think the timing is there, and in my view, that's I think the one of the opportunities of this very difficult situation. I'm usually not the one who believes that the legislation can actually enhance the full transition. I think it has to be owned somehow by the stakeholders. If the stakeholders believe in the transition, they would engage fully in it. If it's imposed externally by their banks or by public authorities, it will be very hard to comply, because sometimes it's not fully reflecting their situation. So I think we have to be aware of that. In terms of the regulatory framework, indeed, I mean, there's a lot of, and I think Luc started with it. The European Commission has to do the SMEs test, and to assess the impact on it. Very often what we think that could be a good solution is that we carve the SMEs out, but that's good approach. But on the other hand, the SMEs are actually not cut from the business reality, so they are actually indirectly exposed to the obligations, be it, for example, in terms of reporting, et cetera, because they engage either as suppliers with large companies, they engage with large corporates such as banks, they engage, with other stakeholders. So I mean, they are not isolated in the business reality, and I think this is something that we have to take into account. I can only subscribe to what has been said in terms of what we should do when we set a regulation. It has to be simple, meaningful, realistic, standardized, proportionate, I would add, and it really need to provide the legal certainty. And I think it really need to provide some solutions that may be accessible for SMEs, which also provide the much needed information to the other stakeholders. But I think this is something that we should always have in our mind when we draft a regulatory framework. I agree, the public sector can help, can support. I think we can draft tools that can actually help to find solutions. And I think, I mean, it can work in other areas. So I think it can work also in sustainability issues, so that the companies can actually buy a ready, sort of like off-the-shelf product that is actually, answering their issues. I think, for instance, one of the examples here is obviously now we're discussing, how the companies will provide data, et cetera, but for them it can be really difficult. So, in my view, for instance, one of the answers could be that we at the beginning, at least we can start help rate the SMEs or certify or label them. Are they compliant? Are they compliant with sustainability criteria? Is that something that this can be good for financial institutions to gather the at the beginning the critical amount of data, and it can be very simple, and maybe some other industries can help us. So if you, for instance, have an SME that is subscribed to a sustainability energy tariff within the energy supplier, would that qualify then immediately, for a sustainability or higher sustainability rating, for instance, without the company even needing to prove themselves, but just the mere fact that they are subscribed to let's say a sustainable or energy saving tariff or something like that. Just going and look into very concrete examples. How we can actually help the companies, because to be honest, the discussion about reporting and big amounts of data and what we can do with it, that's maybe good on the very high level, but that would be very difficult also to apprehend and internalize in the operations of small companies. I mean, they can get to it, but they will need some time, and they will need some guidance. I'm pretty sure. And as Luc mentioned it, no one is against promoting sustainability. I think it's just the opposite. But it's really about finding solutions and the pathways that will be suitable for a majority of companies, and that would not be looked at through the angles and perspectives and optic of big companies or even companies specialized in sustainability reporting or ESG data, et cetera, because I think, to be honest, those two worlds sometimes do not fully match. And I think our role also as policymakers would be to find solutions that will help match these two worlds, so that it in the end produce concrete and meaningful results, but do not overburden the SMEs, which internally, I'm pretty sure they will have to transform as well the way they are dealing with business. But you know how it is. It's for them, they will not hire a big four consultancy company to drive the transition for them. They will have to drive. They will most likely go through it themselves, with the help of the companies that with the accountants, with the banks, with the financial institutions, with the public support. So it takes more time. But in the end, I think the end result, the situation that the companies will find themselves at the end of this process, can be, I think, more stable and also more beneficial in terms of producing the results, rather than imposing quickly on them a lot of new requirements that they can easily get lost with. So I think that's, in a nutshell, how I would suggest to deal with it. I know it's not easy, but I mean, that would not be fun if it would be easy. But I think it requires a lot of cooperation from all the stakeholders, actually, to get into the situation and make sure that this is done properly and simply, meaningfully, realistically, in a standardized way, and in a proportionate manner, which I think is the key word also when we deal with the SMEs community.
Yeah, definitely, Andres. If it were easy, it would already been done, I would assume. So, indeed, I agree, it's not easy, but it will be fun. Like you mentioned a couple of times, finding solutions on how to support SMEs, and you mentioned, Andres, labels. To show how, as an example, to show how an SME could be sustainability compliant. Is this something that you had envisaged at SME United, Luc? Or do you have other solutions that would be useful to share with our audience?
Yes, thank you, Noemi. No labels, because there are already enough labels. But
I saw you frowning, so that's why I'm getting
but we have a solution, and I would like to react on some issues. And the last point on Andre, when he said SMEs need time. The problem is also that the SMEs do not have the time, and this is also forgotten in the proposal of the Commission, because the SMEs will have, from day one, will have to report. I know for the listed SMEs, they have some more time, but SMEs, if the CSRD enters into force, when large enterprises will have to start reporting, they will already need the information from their supply chain. So they will immediately contact the SMEs. So are there solutions? Yes, there are solutions. And I think it's important to mention this also, because Valerie said, no, it should be compulsory. No, I mean, the CSRD says that, and it gave mandate to EFRAG to develop a standard for the listed SMEs, which can be used on a voluntary basis by the SMEs. This is a little bit, a pity that it has been formulated like this, but at the end we can live with it if they follow us, and hopefully also what EFRAG will propose, because a listed SME standard can never be used by a normal SME or a micro enterprise. I mean, everybody agrees that also listed SMEs need to be more transparent, because they are listed. And this standard can never be used by a micro enterprise, for example, by the restaurant of Olivier. So in EFRAG, we have the SME cluster, and I was the chair of it. And we said we are going to draft in the first place a standard, not for the listed SMEs, but a standard that can be used by every enterprise in principle, also by a micro enterprise. And this is exactly what we have done now. So to have a simple standard with the main issues of the CSRD in it. So it's about health and safety, it's about waste, it's about energy consumption, and so on. But it's very simple. And normally, and were also in contact with, of course, the different stakeholders, also with the banks. We asked the banks, what do you need? To be honest, most of the banks said we do not know what we need from the SMEs. So this is already a problem. By the way, we were already sitting together more than 2 years ago, Valerie, together with AICB and EBF, SME United, in order to find a solution to this. So what will be done now? We have developed this very simple standard, which can be used by every SMEs. And if everything goes well, it will be presented now on Thursday to the technical expert group of EFRAG, and it's even public. So we are going to present this simple or simplified standard there, and we hope that it will be approved by the technical expert group. I mean, because
that's a great news, I think, Luc, that you worked on
proportionality.
Yeah, and first, simple first, and not going from the very complicated one. And it's good that you were in the lead. Linked to this, Luc, we have a question on Slido about the Nordic Sustainability Reporting Standard, and they wonder if we are aware of the Nordic Sustainability Reporting Standard. It is developed for SMEs with a few concrete KPIs, voluntary but comparable. Maybe you used that as well in your work, or you had a representative?
No, indeed, because I think I discovered it. And we used it because also and this is very important, we also wanted to avoid, accountancy language. We wanted also a standard that is understandable, the language is understandable by a small enterprise. And this Nordic standard, we use some of the description exactly because it was very well phrased and understandable for everybody. So no technical language about double materiality, so and so on and so on. No, that a standard should be useful and workable and feasible for a small entrepreneur. I mean, in my group, we had somebody from the European Banking Federation, an Italian, who always said, okay, my point of reference is my pizzeria. Is my pizza man capable to use this standard and to fill it in? And this should be the bottom line. And later on, you can add, and also this will certainly be the case. Large enterprises will certainly maybe ask more information if necessary, but it's not always necessary to have the exact data. You can also work with averages. Mm-hmm. I mean, and certainly for small and medium-sized enterprises. So there we can also go, for example, to the use of sector data instead of the exact data, because this also is a consequence or is an argument for proportionality. You should not go. Yeah, sometimes, of course, it's necessary to have the exact data, but in a lot of cases, you can do as a stakeholder, as a shareholder, as an NGO, with averages from the sector.
How does the banking sector react to such a standard, Valérie? Maybe you were part of this exercise as well?
No, unfortunately, but I'm very pleased to hear about this standard. I think it's everything we are wishing for. I agree with you about the sectoral approach, But and of course, that's what we are using right now, a sectoral approach in order to evaluate, because we have nothing else. But at the end, I think it's very important to have, if not that, a few data, and very simple one, in order to be able to have this dialogue, with our customers, because I think it's really our responsibility as a financial entity to understand what are the key issues for our customers, of course, because as a financial institution, we have to be very much aware of the risk we are taking when we grant some credit, because we want to see if this specific entity, it will be touched by the transition, if the continuity of its business model, of its buildings, of whatever. So we have to have this discussion. So a very simple, if it would be just only if it will be able to face the energy cost, the cost of energy. Right now, it's a question that we have to ask ourselves when we grant a credit. So we have to. So that's a simple, some simple very KPIs, just in order to document this strategic dialogue, this transition dialogue that we have with our customers, and just to be able to support them and to continue finance them. But very happy to hear about this simple.
We will cross our fingers on Thursday for you, Luc. Great. And Jean-François, do you think that this could also help listed SMEs, because the standard is not out yet as well for listed SMEs, right? So it's still a work in progress.
We'll wait and see. I was quoting a list of simplified criteria by the Association Française de Gestion 26, maybe the criteria that Luc will publish very soon will be better. I hope so, of course, for SMEs. Two small remarks. First one, even for a pizzeria, of course, you can have some very figures and some important figures. I think Valérie was saying the same, consumption of energy, for instance, because the sectoral average is not good to discriminate between the people who are efficient and people who are not efficient, if you take the case of a pizzeria, for instance. So that's my first remark. Second remark, when you are not a pizzeria, but you have a SME which is more important and which has real important relationship with energy, with environment, and so on, there, of course, you can use sectoral average, but more and more, you will have to progressively individualize your company. We must remember that the objective is, of course, to make progress on the sustainable road, to have less consumption of energy, and so on, to have less footprint on the biodiversity and so on. So some companies are, of course, very much linked to these challenges. Others are not. If you work in a firm which is in services, I don't know, a consultant, for instance, you're not so concerned by all those criteria. So you can report, I would say, an average footprint linked to the sector of consulting. There is no issue. If you are in agro-industry, if you have in building and so on, there, of course, you must make differences between SMEs to be sure that you make progress, that the good SMEs are making progress on the road, on the sustainable road. So those are my remarks. But of course, I welcome the fact that SME United will make concrete proposals. Yes, the last point I wanted to make is about time. I both agree with Luc that there is a time pressure. In the same, but I would like also to say that all the listed SMEs that I have interviewed and which are now considered as good pupils took time to do it. You cannot do it in 1 year or 2 years. First, you start by measuring simple things. and then more complicated. For the climate, it's not easy. The carbon footprint, for instance, is not easy for most of SMEs. And the trajectory, the carbon trajectory is all the more difficult. And there you need some help for people for scenario. There the sectoral scenarios, for instance, are interesting, but that does not depend on the SME. So you need time. And I agree with Luc that you should allow SMEs to have time to do this kind of thing, because unless it will be bad work and it will be counterproductive, I guess.
Yeah, that's for sure. And to support SMEs, can we go? So we still have, let's say, a bit more than 10 minutes to finish our conversation here. If we go a bit more into the practicalities of going on on this sustainable road for SMEs, how could we support them to kick off the journey, or to go on this road? Where would you suggest them to start off? Would you have any? Yes,
Can I start? Yeah. So
yes.
Yeah, just to build on what was said before about this simple standard for the SMEs, and be it the Nordic one, or here in Denmark we also have a small standard. So I think make it easy for the SMEs to find out what standard is the most preferable one to use as inspiration. And then you just talked about sector average and data. Here I would like to say that there's a great opportunity to automate a lot of the data that is needed for this reporting, be it the climate accounting, where you can easily, at least in Denmark, you can get the electricity, the heating, consumption of oil from suppliers and so on. It's actually already, a lot of it is automated, and accounting systems can already calculate gender diversity, equal pay, sick leave, and all these things. So yeah, a great way to start is to find out how much is actually available data automatically to you, and then see how much of the standard for the SME that you can actually fill out already. And then, of course, there's a risk that the banks and your big customers and the authorities will ask a bit different data from you, but then at least you get started with it.
So start with getting some figures in order to see where you stand, maybe, and then start the journey from there. It would be your suggestion. Yes, there. Anybody else that want to react to this? Valérie?
Yes, I think it's very important that because you said that maybe your banks will be asking you something different. I think it's very important that the different stakeholders of the SME do not ask different things. So I think that's why it's very important to have to agree on some simplified KPIs that will be needed from SMEs. That is, simplified KPIs should be fed into a database that all the stakeholders of the CMEs could use, in order not to bother the SMEs with whatever demand each stakeholder may have. So I think that's very, very important. Simplified KPIs needed from the SMEs with simplified tools. These KPIs being fed into a global database, and this database would feed the different stakeholders.
Yeah, that would be indeed very, very useful. We have a couple of questions. Anybody that want to react first to this, road to sustainability, and what Valérie just mentioned on having all, the same needs for data, and agree. So the standard that EFRAG is in the process of approving for SMEs. I'm just mentioning that it's Yeah, maybe. So it's. I'm just going to read, Luc, your point that so it's an SME cluster at EFRAG that developed a draft standard that will be presented at EFRAG, so that we are clear during this webinar on what to expect. And so, indeed, Valérie, the best would be that everybody agrees. We can always ask a bit more depending on the sector or the needs, but that's important to start small and then add building blocks. So we have a couple of questions. So yeah, one I think that would be very easy for you to answer is, could the sustainable transition, so moving from fossil to renewable energy or energy effective production processes, etc., be an opportunity for SMEs too? I think that we already covered this, and we agreed that that was a must, indeed, Jean-François. Then a suggestion would, if governments or the EU would introduce a free-to-use carbon footprint calculator for SMEs, would this help? Does this exist already? I don't know. Maybe
yes, yeah. At least in Denmark, the authorities have developed a standard for how to work with your scope 1, 2, and 3. And I know they are planning to develop it further and also automate some of the data entry, for example, electricity and heating and all these simple data entry. So that is a great tool for SMEs to get started. Yeah, and the more precise data, the more trustworthy, the better such a tool would be.
Andrzej, is this something that is in discussion in the European institutions? Do you know if this is something maybe the Commission is working on? Or no.
I was not part of any of these debates, and
know.
that's why I highlighted it. I think that would be the way forward. I mean, I know that the SMEs don't like labels and stuff like that, but I think it's not about the name itself, but it's really providing a tool, and this can be provided also by the financial sector, for instance. That will allow for companies and I fully agree with Luc, in a language that is understandable for a regular human to go through and actually put into the information that is needed. I fully agree with what Jesper mentioned and with the automatization. I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of data that could actually be fed in by other sectors, like the energy facilities, but also providers of other services that will just, they already try to provide sustainable certified products, for instance. So that if the SMEs actually tapped into it, then why not just to take it over and link it with the rating? But this is exactly, I think, what we should be able to provide. I'm not sure the EU will. It would be ideal, but I think to echo what Luc mentioned, all these social sustainable reporting or the due diligence reporting, those are all directives for some reason. So in the end, the final decision will be taken on unfortunately on the member states level only, and then we will have to see whether they will be able actually to come up with something that is more harmonized. I would like to see the standards, like the EFRAG would be fully copy paste into the systems, but we know that some member states will apply some national arrangements as well. But I think this would be the way forward, and find tools that can actually simplify and facilitate the work for SMEs to help them actually. And this is what I was mentioning, by bridging the gap between where they are currently and where they need to get. And let's start with what they already have, what is available, and let's see if there's tools that can be actually provided. As I said, it could be even by the financial sector or together with the public authorities. It can be provided, through the standard setting authorities. But I think this is something where we need to find and be creative, where we need to find ways how to make SMEs life easier in this regard.
Okay, and I see hands raised now. That time is pressing. Luc, you were first.
Very
Tell us.
quickly on those tools, because there are quite a number of diverging messages that I received. I mean, when we were preparing also the standard, some say, okay, on the internet you can find a calculator, so it's easy to use. Others say, no, this is crap. You at least need 4,000 euro. Our Danish organization said that in average, a company in Denmark needs 2 days to calculate the CO2 emissions. So it will depend on what we will use. For example, also if you have can you give simply your electricity bill, but then depends if on the invoice it's mentioned this percentage come from green energy and so on. So it will depend, and this is still something, and there I fully agree with Andre. Okay, we need time to develop this, and those tools are not there, and not even for the large enterprises, because they do not have the IT yet. It was even mentioned in the proposal of the Commission that the impact on large companies, because now a lot of large companies will also have to report for the first time, and the tools are not there. So this is indeed a problem, but we have to see what kind of information the different stakeholders need, and they're indeed with the banks. As I said, we were sitting already 2 years ago together. If they can develop something which can be standardized, this would also be very welcome. But it will also depend on the sector. For example, in the transport sector, there the CO2 emissions are already used as a kind of criteria for the selection of selecting companies in the supply chain. So there we still have to look at this kind of tools. But now the first priority is to agree on a simple standard.
Yeah. Okay, and Jean-François, tell us.
Yes, I wanted to react on the role of the EU institutions, because as Andrés has said at the beginning, the role of the EU institution is generally to make regulations, and we have had the regulations in this sector. What I would like, and I'm not alone, and Luc, Accountancy Europe, EBF, ESCB, etc., share this, is more involvement in assistance to the sector. And we made a démarche to the Deputy Director General of DG GROW in charge of SMEs. What we would like is to have something at the EU level which will be able to provide the SMEs with information, good information, best practices. You mentioned something in some countries. Why not having at the European level? What are the best examples in each country and so on? And in my paper, I'm an old ex-civil servant of the European Commission years ago, so I know a little how it works. And in my paper, I made a very small concrete proposal. Why to have the ministers of charge of SMEs in each of the 27 countries meeting once a year with the representative of the Commission and discuss the issue and try to find what they do in their countries, what is going well, where are the difficulties and so on. And then, of course, to help at the national level, the different stakeholders that we have mentioned, helping the SMEs to try to have this regrouping of initiatives. Some are very interesting, some are good, some are positive, and to overcome the difficulties. So let's do something, let's do it at the EU level, because there we can have a mass of information, of practices which are interesting.
I think that we are going to close on this suggestion. Jean-François, you made it.
Modest one.
So thank you.
Maybe the European Parliament can follow suit.
Propose that within the SME intergroup. That is a good suggestion, and that cover your idea about the platform of exchanging across countries, etc. So I think I still have 2 minutes to thank you all for participating to this great panel. I think that was a really fruitful discussion for us. I would like to thank you also all my colleagues at Accountancy Europe that made it happen, in particular Johan and Amanda. I think that given the great conversation, we are going to publish, a policy document, summarizing what we discussed, what we heard on potential, all the various recommendations, potentially with your organizations that you are representing here in this panel. And I also would like to say that, as Olivier mentioned in the opening, SMEs has always been a key priority for Accountancy Europe in all the projects that we do, but it's sometimes a bit difficult to showcase when we work on the EFRAG sustainability reporting standards, where we actually, that are often only at least for the beginning, written for big listed companies. So going down to how to support SMEs in all this sustainability agenda was really great. And I think this is also useful to our profession, to our member bodies, and to all the accountants that try to support their SME clients in all this path towards a more sustainable economy. So thank you very much for all your interest and your participation, and we will keep each other posted. Bye. Thank you very much.